Folks, we are back. Welcome on back for our final edition of Traders Talk for this calendar year 2023. Great to see all of our students and members alike once again. We have Abdul, Grant, we have Margaret, Phil, we have Charles, Ravina, Brad, we had John before, Brian, we had Kathleen, and a whole slew of our students joining us inside our live trading room. Of course, let me know if you can hear me, folks, loud and clear inside our chat board, but great to see all of us there. Great to have all of us back otherwise on Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, the works, at Cyber Trading U. For anyone that is new to the stream, well, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Josh Levitan. I'm Fausto's senior instructor here at Cyber Trading U. Welcome aboard to Robert G. joining us on YouTube, might I say. Roberto G. And with that, hey, if you are not subscribed just yet, be a friend, tell a friend, hit the subscribe button, and always look to spread the good word of Cyber Trading University at Cyber Trading U on all of our social media streams and platforms alike. But here we are, Tuesday morning as such, coming off Christmas, though. Might I say again, Merry Christmas to you and yours, and Happy New Year going forward, right? Hopefully it is a happy, healthy, most importantly healthy, but alongside those two, a very prosperous year for all of us alike. So without further ado, great to see Ron, one of our new trial members, joining us here. So whether you are a new trial member joining us inside our live trading room, like Ron B is here today, or joining us on YouTube, Facebook Live, etc., fairly new to cyber trading, here every morning, Traders Talk, or every Tuesday morning, might I say, at 11 o'clock Eastern, we conduct our weekly workshop, Traders Talk. This really gives us the best outlet to go over the X's and O's as to why a stock actually made the move that it made. You know what I mean? Not just like, oh yeah, looking back in hindsight, everyone should have bought at the bottom and sold at the top. And oh yeah, if trading was that easy, right? You know, a few of our students called out AMD today. I'm just using this as a very quick example, but hey, this is a stock that we love, and you could have done really well on this trade in the morning. But, you know, here in Traders Talk, this workshop, the goal of it is not for me to tell you, oh yeah, just buy the bottom here, sell the top here. Done. That's all. That's it. That's easy, right? No. Yes, we are going over things in hindsight, but we're breaking down real moves as they happened, at least inside our live trading room. So let's talk about ARBB. This was a phenomenal pop that probably 20, 25 of our students collectively at the same time were in and took money on. So, you know, to go over this move, at least, it's actually trying to push back up to $4 as I'm talking. So perhaps as we go through this trade, it'll make a new move for us here. But ARBB news came out on this trade early in pre-market. What I'll do is even show my Benzinga Pro news feed. We're going to do the bunch here, folks. We're going to go over all of this trade from head to toe. But this trade started in pre-market. Let's see. I don't have any news for this. I know Rich posted some news on a bunch of trades this morning, and I assume that ARBB was even one of them, with it being up as much as it was. But honestly, this is all I got here so far from early this morning, 8 o'clock. Yeah, there's no technical news out on the stock even. So that can make you a little leery of trying to trade it, right? And if that's the case, to each their own, right? You know, everyone has their own cup of tea. And if you'd rather at least have a headline out for the stock, I don't blame you. So, you know, that's that. But for those that were following this in our trading room without news, well, we had resistance at 250, 50-cent level right here in pre-market. It popped a little over it after 8 o'clock, probably some late print that came in, but otherwise really did a good number after 7:30 in the morning, held pretty tightly under that level. So you know that that's like a pretty big level to work off of. The more buying that comes in off that level, perhaps it could pop. Really silly question, folks. I know every one of us should get this right away, but or especially those of us inside our live trading room. But what's the next big level above $2.50, just regardless of the stock, regardless of what book map may look like, or level 3, you know, what's the next assumed level after 250, especially for a cheap stock? Yeah, next 50-cent increment here, that being a whole number price at $3. $3 is the next assumed level. You know, this had a little resistance at 265, 270, the pre-market tippy top right there. But I would say $3 is your next assumed level. Let me ask us here, folks, from Patrick, Abdul, Brad, Margaret, is 50 cents a big move from, you know, a cheap stock like this, $2, 50 cent stock? Is that a big move, 50 cents? Do you think 50 cents is big or small? Every one of us saying, yes, it is a big move. Mark saying a huge move. Certainly. So why would you not think, hey, if it could break over 250, there is a great case to see this try and run up higher to 3. Maybe it doesn't break 3. Maybe it has a tough time breaking 3. Obviously, in hindsight, Captain Hindsight comment, this is now trading at $4.20. So in terms of just simple risk reward, simple opportunity in terms of what we look for here at CTU, just without even looking at what level 3 and eventually level 4 looked like at the time, it's to say, hey, if this could break over 250 cleanly, why not see a move up at least closer up to 3? So, hey, maybe not 50 cents, but if you can get 35, 40 cents out of that, 42 cents, that's a pretty handsome profit, right? On 1,000 shares, that's $400, $420. Here is the issue on this trade after 9:30. This popped and it got halted right at 9:34, like basically on the cusp of the first 5 minutes right there. So that's where a lot of us probably didn't have the chance to jump in. If you're a more experienced student, if you're someone that definitely is more successful day to day with us, then perhaps you could try and take the first few minutes. Me, myself, I typically hold off on the first 3 to 5 minutes. That's typically what I say. When I saw this pop, I wanted to get filled on a pullback at 250, and it didn't give it to me. So the more it popped up, I was thinking, okay, maybe if there's an iceberg that comes into play, I can make a new level. Otherwise, 3 is the next price. Well, this did what you all see it did here. Not just move up more, but it got halted. So that's where I decided to take a chance. When this started to come in on the HFTs, just at what time is it? It was a 10-minute halt. It was right at 9:33 and 32 seconds. It was like pretty much right in that window. I said, all right, let's give it a shot. Now, I got filled right at the high there, 277, which I personally hate doing. I'm not a fan of just jumping in to jump in. But hey, aside from even just saying $3, which you assume to be a level, there's only about 6,200 shares there on level 4. So right there's not much showing even. Is there anything even above $3? Is there anything even above just even $2.60 here prior to the halt? Not really. Don't really have any orange or yellow, and certainly no dark red that would indicate a clear level of resistance. Really briefly, I had this up before from my coaching session with one of our students earlier, Michael, and he had a nice trade on CCL. Only reason I bring this up to you is because, well, comparing apples to oranges, I think that we could all see here live today, you got a big resistance at $20. I think it's a dark red line. That's easy on the eyes to call that a key level. On the ARBB, after $3, they're really, or even after like 260-ish here prior to the halt, there wasn't much above that, let alone above 3. So that's where I said, all right, let's give this a chance, see if this can make the push up higher. And if this pulls back and tanks right away after, then I'll just take a small loss or break even, just be quick to get out. That's not easy to say for a new student to do, by the way. This certainly is more of like probably a level 3 stock at least, given the halt. Thankfully, this had good liquidity earlier today. Right now, it's thinning out a little bit more as I'm talking. So, it looks like it's probably just more of a level 4, I'd say. But either way, in terms of how we categorize these stocks, this is not a stock any new trader should be, trying to jump headfirst into. This is not a stock that, a new student of CTU should be trying to, follow on a large amount of shares. You want to do it on small size, that's one thing, be my guest, but it's already up a lot when it's reopening up here at $3. So if this crapped out the other way, I would have had no problem getting stopped out completely break even. But thankfully, what this did was build higher lows. It was shaking around the opening halt print line here at 297. So certainly, if not $3, you could definitely guaranteed 100,000% say 297 is your key level going forward. It's about a 217,000 share transaction that came in on the tape. Now, if you don't have level 4, you could actually see this the old-fashioned way. I do want to show that briefly if I could, just on the old time and sales. So as you're watching the stock get halted, well, by the time it reopens up at the time, 9:43 and like 50 seconds roughly. Hopefully I can get this one shot. Right there. Perfect. So it's a 217,000 share transaction. It got filled at 297 by the time this reopened up. So we teach this in our class in the phase 1 stock course and much further in phase 2, where you got to have your eyes on the tape when it comes to seeing a stock reopening up off of a halt, because this big price or this transaction creates a huge level for the trade going forward. So where this ended up shaking around on the first candle or two, it began to re-solidify itself back above 297. From there, we got a pretty big move shortly after. And with that, I mean, hey, on this trade, it's just to say you can scale out, and the more it goes up, obviously you're happy, but the more it goes up, you are expected for this to see a pullback, right? We were saying 10:15, 10:30 is that infamous reversal time. We ended up getting out sooner on this trade. It tried to pop over 450. It gave us a chance again. But once the foot's taken off the gas pedal, meaning once this stock either makes a very sharp rejection or simply begins to make lower highs over time, it could always pop higher. But even with this iceberg order that showed up at 450, this is something that would prevent this from making the larger run up. So this was looking really strong up to 5. We had this order pop up here for about 22, 23,000. If it's not going to suddenly out of nowhere make a strong push up to it, which we don't expect, notice the words that we're using there to describe it, this is a lower high, and you're seeing the foot taken off the gas pedal a bit there. So the difference between a stock like this and a stock like NEO, which is also on our morning list, I mean, one is up God knows how much percent, the other isn't. So eventually, when this loses its momentum going up, you're going to see a sharper retracement. And this ended up pulling back. I took a small loss on this after at 375, 370 level. I looked for the entry. It was right here even. Took the trade, and then I went break even again on the second attempt. But afterwards, I didn't jump back in. I was on a coaching call with one of our students. We were going over a few different trades, but here we are now. Look at this thing now. Looks like it moved up, just kind of wrapping up this move, but it moved up pretty nicely. Suddenly an iceberg showed up here at 440. And although that order got pulled, looks like the order got pulled, the stock went right up to the price and you had the same reaction. It's the same reaction that you would have had if that order was there and actually got filled. They pulled the order, but I think it was to lure those last traders in, and then they just smashed the sell button at market, just right back down. So, hey, for a stock that's up this much, we saw it happen on POL. Just look at the daily chart. This was up like 1,000%, tanked. C4 was up 1,000+%, tanked. We had the TPST trade, which I always love to show from earlier this calendar year. That was up 3,000%. I think that's one of the largest moves I've ever seen in my near 10 years of being with Fausto. Well, hey, ARPB is still right now up 301% as I'm flapping my gums right now. That means it was up that much more when it was pushing here. So, yes, it could keep pushing up so long as you see something that justifies the push. Hey, if it just breaks higher and people just smash through all of the sell volume here, that's one thing. But more so, it's to see, hey, is there any support that could pull up? Is there any support that could step in here, like a ladder on the buy side? This was something popping up, but it was on the sell side. So that's what pushed this down a lot further. Now, on this trade, hey, you got the VWAP price here technically at 345. You do have this order that's been here since 10:42 Eastern this morning, about 40 minutes ago. So with saying that, this area here should be our next designed support. But if it just breaks right under there and then just keeps tanking, there's no entry. So our whole philosophy at CTU is to go with momentum, right? So, hey, I'm going to do it, folks. You're going to be annoyed. I'm going to ask you to repeat my catchphrase for me inside our live trading room. So for Patrick and like Joyce and Mark, I know that you're quick to the punch, definitely. What is my catchphrase with buying a stock? My best entries to buy a stock are directly after what? My best entries to buy a stock are directly after what? And Lita actually summarizes it quite perfectly there. So technically, my catchphrase goes, my best entries to buy a stock are directly after it breaks through a big level on the way up. Well, in this case, if this is going to be the bounce spot here, well, we actually need this to break under this level first, because that's the only way it's going to break through this level here on the way back up. So in terms of seeing support, you got to see that under and over move that Leda typed in the chat room. Otherwise, a breakout over resistance is just a break over big level. It's the same exact thing. So here, this is just looking for support. We got to see this go under first, then back over. If it goes under and then tanks, there's no ball. There's no game to play on this trade. That happens earlier on a trade. I think, geez, it's been a long morning, folks. You had the IINN. I think it could have been on this where, it broke through big level and it just kept dropping, right? There's just zero entry. So you sit there, you're like, all right, don't feel bad about yourself. You're on the right thing. But if it just keeps dropping and there's no attempt from the buyers out there, then we're going to follow that, meaning we're not going to take that trade. And we'll just either see what the next level is, which honestly isn't the best plan. Otherwise, it's more so to just say, move on, find another stock out there that's moving, right? So, ideally, that's what I would look to do. Now, really quick, we just showed book map. That is level 4, but I want to show level 3. This is the NASDAQ Bookviewer. And just right now live, before I go into the question from my student Arthur here, I just want to show this live right now, right? Just want to see what the NASDAQ Bookviewer looks live, just at least from NASDAQ side here specifically. There isn't really a major sell order out there. There isn't anything 100,000 plus shares out there, 50,000 plus shares. I can't really rely on a clear level as far as what's on here right now. And that's okay. Just because there is not an iceberg order out there doesn't mean there won't be one that pops up. It just means that right now there isn't really much that I could dictate an entry off of here, at least looking at this order book. Perhaps if I extend the price fields and go down lower, at 350, it's probably through a different ECN. Notice there's only about 4,300 shares right there at 350. Well, just before on Bookmap on level 4, technically we saw a lot more from there, but that's likely because that's through a different order book or ECN, a smaller one. But just here in this case, this rarer case, you're seeing it pop up just through this ECN at 350. So it's not showing on NASDAQ side. Notice though, the column where it shows the orders. Well, that's how you could also try and identify potential support resistance. So even on the sell side, actually, as we go up here, looking at where my cursor is on the far right, at like 410, there's about 13 total sell orders out there. Possibly that could be a level to work off of. 440, there's about 15 total sell orders out there. That could be a level of resistance to work off of. Definitely 450 then, because that's about 37. That's definitely your larger level above. But that's where here at 350 on the buy side, notice here there's about 15, 16 total buy orders out there. The size isn't impressive, making up 4,300. But the fact that there's 15 total buy orders out there, it leads me to ask, well, what if there's more volume once that price gets tested? So, we talk a lot about this in our main curriculum, the Phase 1 stock course. We did this actually just this past month. So if you're a new student joining CTU, I do recommend for you to even go back in like the November classes, the recordings on your webpage, just for you to go through. Let's see. Something may have just popped up actually suddenly here. Give me a quick moment. And this is likely through the same ECN as the order at 350. Look at this. Whoa, on level 4, this just popped up suddenly. 141,000 share buy order just showing up right now at $3.55. So it looks like predominantly you're seeing more orders being routed through the EDGX book or the ARCA book, either one. So right now that definitely solidifies that area of support, 350-ish, 355 area. Just see if it drops down there, and we'll see if it makes that famed under and over move over time. But getting back to Bookviewer, at least, you could still identify that area as support looking at the total number of orders that make it up. Because looking at 15 versus 1 or 15 versus 3 or versus 5 versus all these tiny numbers there, that stands out. So that's how you could also identify support resistance with Bookviewer. Let's actually go through one quick example here, because this one actually, I took this picture this morning and it was a great snapshot. Fausto, if you're listening, you'd be impressed. No, it's to say that we had this larger order pop up. Oh, you know what? Shoot, I don't know if I ended up clipping it. It may have been on the morning meeting video I ended up doing, but it was a pretty massive sell order out there. It was on this IINN stock. Ah, crap, I didn't actually take the screenshot. We showed it in the morning meeting, though, at 9 a.m. this morning. Well, obviously, it's the line pretty much right here at 270. It was a 175,000 share order on the sell side. And let's see even on Bookmap if it will show, because I think it did there. Now, that was directly through NASDAQ. So that showed on the Bookviewer, and it shows on Bookmap too. So this one will be pretty simple to see here. About 189,000 shares in total at 270. So, when you see 175K pop up, that was it. Oh, this was at 8:51 in the morning I'm looking at here. So this was probably 10 minutes before the order showed up, or 15 minutes before, right? Because it showed, or no, not even, like 5 minutes. Damn, look at that. It popped up at 8:56. I actually took this snapshot at the time, 8:51. It's tiny font there, but shoot. Well, you see it there. It showed up on Bookviewer. Try and take my word for that there. And suddenly, if it's not going to smash through that order at 270, it's more prone to see it drop off. So I bring that up to you just because the same thing to a degree happened here at ARBB at 440, showed up before it moved up to the price. And, although that order got pulled, the same result happened, a massive shake, probably a bunch of just market sell-off, profit taking there. Now, the question is, do more buyers step in? And that's what you're starting to see here. So this may look to get tested coming up. We'll see if this ends up laddering up on the buy side too, perhaps over time here. But let me get back to my question here. There was one from Arthur that I had from email, and I wanted to kind of just go into the Bookviewer here with that. So Arthur A was asking, how do you set up the Bookviewer and Bookmap? He's actually asking both. He's actually perfect. Okay, so I don't feel so bad talking as much Bookmap there for Arthur. He actually has both. Okay, I will tell you, if you got Bookmap level 4, that is, then technically you don't really need to be following the NASDAQ Bookviewer, this level 3. If you have level 4 already, that is. If you don't have level 4, then you definitely need to get the NASDAQ Bookviewer. It's an utter necessity. I mentioned that right away in class. So at least Arthur has both. So Arthur, as a C2 student, we'll be able to get you set up on Bookmap down the line. But really here for Bookviewer, what I want to show for everyone is really just showing you the columns that we use. So when you launch NASDAQ Bookviewer, it's going to auto-populate a lot of these columns at times, and just kind of by default. There's no save button. That's the only gripe Fausto and I got with this whole thing. So sometimes it might give you all the numbers that you don't need. So the ones that we try and focus on, the columns that I show, are orders, shares, and then the price, meaning bid or ask. So all of these others here, otherwise, I'm going to just take off again. And it should just give you this. You want to make sure that the price column here is checked off, because if not, it's going to look like this. You want to have it checked off. So right there. And then filters. We teach this more in the phase 1 stock course that I do. So more kind of just showing you how you could filter this based off a certain price range or certain order size and all of that through the filters tab on the top left. All right. Now, Bookmap, that's definitely a bit more intuitive. So that I could talk to you about more on the side, perhaps just after we finish up Traders Talk, or I could just email you back on the side there. All right. Linda says, Josh, screenshot might turn up on Windows. No, so I checked already. Just on my other monitor, I was checking my file folder, and I didn't see it there. So I appreciate the suggestion. All right. So, hey, IINN dumped off after that iceberg order showed up. Unfortunately, that was a bit of a loser here this morning. I had a question from another student. just mention it at least generally speaking, because they were a bit frustrated going into this week. They took a lot of time to study going off of Christmas and the holiday weekend. Hopefully they didn't spend too much time studying, right? You got to spend time with family there, right? I'm just teasing, but it's great that they were dipping into the classes still, but they were a bit frustrated through email, and I could just tell this from my side of things. So without mentioning the student, it is to say that their biggest gripe is feeling overwhelmed by how much is moving out there in the market, even before the market opens up. And then once the opening bell hits, based on when the market opens, they say, you and Fausto are really just diving into a bunch of different trades that weren't even on the list. It makes new students like myself very frustrated. How do I take advantage of the call outs being made? And how do I feel like this will be something that's worth my time? So that is a very good question. And I do want to make mention, right? This part is not to this student, but this part is to everyone else. Just as a blanket comment, there is a lot to digest in our classes. Phases 1 and 2, there's a lot that I teach. It's a rotating cycle of classes, meaning it's not the same classes we do every single month. That actually makes it really boring, right? So a number of years back, I expanded Fausto's curriculum and 16 classes uniquely in phases 1 and then 16 in phase 2. Just one thing to mention, in 2024, I'll even show you a small little snippet right here. We are redesigning the curriculum. It's been a little while. It's going to be 3-month cycle instead of 4. That's basically what you're seeing there. So it's not to say there's less to go through, but we're going to be able to at least make it more efficient for the student to go through, so you don't feel like you're staring up Mount Everest, when you're going through the recordings. Now, that is where, though, we will have a much greater chance to answer this question. How do you build up your personal list throughout the morning, and really how do you just stick with that? Everyone is a different human being, right? So it's not as easy for old Josh here to tell everyone, oh, you got to do your best to stay focused on a group of 2 or 3 stocks, and that's it. There are some people here that simply don't have that in them to they're just much more antsy to look at this, look at that, look at this, look at that. And that's just like a character trait as a person. It's, everyone is different. I have my own character flaws. I'm no robot. Come on. So it is to say, though, that no matter what I say in this conversation, I know that I'm speaking to a group of people, a group of humans, and not robots, where I don't have a 100% expectation for everyone to just do as I say. It's not as easy, right? So that's where, beginning in pre-market, you do want to take the time to be organized and scan. If I don't have my list set up at least by 8:30 in the morning, then I'll feel like my back's against the wall when it comes to prepping up those stocks that I am interested in. Even if I do decide to dwindle that list down to a group of 2, 3, 4 stocks, and that's it. All right, well, if it's 9:15 in the morning and I figure that out, I only have 10, 15 minutes to plot levels. And that is not going to take you a long way right before them. You're going to feel like your back's against the wall. So one thing to do is to just simply be present at your desk. If you're able to be at your desk by 8:30 Eastern, you have a full 60 minutes to grab your coffee, to stretch the legs, to take a step back and breathe and be like, okay, what's on the gainers list here? What's Josh calling out in the chat? What's Rich calling out in the chat? What's on the pre-market watch list, right? Simply put, if you're not there at your desk doing that to begin, if you're, maybe at your desk, but if you're just kind of looking at the news, twiddling your thumbs, you're wasting time. So it's not just being at your desk, but it is eventually, hey, what's on the gainers list? Let's start scanning on our own. What's already on the pre-market watch list, and start from there. So let's say IINN. Well, hey, we know this was a loser today. That's easy to say in hindsight. But after we picked the 2 or 3 stocks that we're interested in, well, hey, let me ask us, aside from just plotting levels, which is so important, obviously it is, aside from plotting levels, support, resistance, what is one other basic characteristic of a chart that we need to follow? Hint, follow, right? So, what's on the chart, another basic, characteristic of a trade, aside from support, resistance? Mark, Sam, I mean, of course, volume there too, Brad, but that plays into the whole buy sell side, right? Or plays into the whole support resistance thing, right? But trend, yeah, trend, simple trend. Okay. Hey, this popped at 8:45 in the morning, right? Looked pretty good. I put it on the morning watch list, right? It was one of 4 stocks I put on the list at like 9 o'clock, 9:05 in the morning, right? Okay. Leading into the market open from 8:50 to 9:30. What is that trend? From 8:50 in the morning going into 9:30, the 40 minutes before the market opens up. What is that trend? Is it up? Is it down? Or is it flat? After the big pop, obviously, around 8:50 in the morning, all the way to 9:30, the 40 minutes prior to the opening bell, what is that trend? Up, down, flat. What do we got? Robert saying sideways, Phil saying down, Raymond saying sideways, Margaret saying down, no one saying up. That's the answer there, right? 0 people here are saying up. So that leads me to say, okay, let's just even say down just to go with this example. You could say sideways, great answer. Just notice no one said up. And if we're not really seeing much buying pressure here at this time, what are we more so seeing? Even if you said flat, what are we more so seeing if we're not seeing buying pressure? Momentum to the upside. We're seeing selling pressure, momentum to the downside, right? So the question you want to ask is, what happens after 9:30 when history repeats itself? Now, hey, you could say that in relation to a pop. Like if there was a ton of buying here near the top in pre-market and it breaks over that, there could be a fair entry. There could be a legitimate entry right there. And let me just take a look. Did I even remove this from the heat map? No, I didn't. Okay. Okay, so we had that iceberg at 270. Again, that's where we had the major resistance. There really isn't much here that I would signal as like any specifically large price. And then you have the massive sell order popping up here anyway. So to me, there really isn't anything looking good here as far as like, maybe if it could smash over 270, that's different. Even before the market opens up, actually, look what happens. It seems like this order still shows at 270, but you have a new sell order popping up. It was for about 87 plus thousand shares there. Now, since this order showed up for me on the NASDAQ Bookviewer at the time, it did live at least. Go back on the morning meeting, it was there. We saw it all as a team. Then my belief is that you would see this one also at 250. So you have an iceberg at 270, an iceberg at 250. And by the time the market opens up, it doesn't even false break 250, doesn't even test 250, doesn't even give you a hard time. It drops off, but makes it easy for us to say, let's just move on, right? So it's not even just to assume the first breakout is where you're going to expect the run, but it doesn't even give you one false breakout. Not even one. It just makes it so easy where it's just, all right, drops. That's it. So not a bad setup if you were thinking like, all right, let's see resistance turn into support. But clearly, once this begins to shake lower here at this time, it's only 9:38, 9:39 in the morning. That is where you just say, all right, done, move on. And, you don't trade it, but you say, all right, that's it. Clearly, the, history repeating itself part is more in the sense of this continuing to trend down, right? So, that's where otherwise ARDB, what made this such a great trade was, well, from my trade state, when I took it from 277, this didn't break lower. It didn't stop me out on a break-even trade. Thankfully, this held that 297 price and kept going. Well, even here, this is like not really a safe entry. It does hold support nicely around 350, but there's no guarantee it's going to come back up again. If you take the chance, it worked out, but this was on a pretty smooth downtrend here too. So over time, the more this could begin to build support, then perhaps there's a better trade on it. Or, if there's something clearly popping up that could be a ladder on the buy side, something of that nature. But yeah, right now, this looks like it's just pulling down towards that 355, 350 here for the time being. And the VWAP. And you got the VWAP there too. That's a third level right there to factor in. Robert saying, if you see that coming, how about buying a put? So I don't think this one's optionable to start. That's a very good question in terms of general strategy. If you are experienced with trading options, then that would be something to cater that would cater to you. You don't need to do that, just so you know. If you don't trade options, then just realize then there is zero necessity to do that. There's zero need. So if this gets discussed, just realize I'm assisting other traders that are interested in trading options, right? So to answer Robert's question, if IINN, he's talking about optionable. Yeah, I mean, listen, if it's liquid, if the option order book is liquid and you think it's not going to break higher and you jump in buying puts, well, make sure you set your stop, obviously, because if this breaks a higher high over time, hey, look at what happened even earlier. Look what happened to C4. I don't know if that was optionable even, but if it was, imagine getting smashed on the run up here as it continues. So, on any single trade, stock, option, you name it, you got to set your stop. You got to put your seatbelt on. To answer Robert's question in full, if you're experienced with trading options and you follow the cyber trading university reversal time rule and you're thinking like 10:30, it could really pull back lower, then there's a chance where, hey, if it breaks support, then there's a case to see it. Held resistance after, dropped off nicely. It's a gap fill. Yeah, why not? But that's like easy to agree on after the fact, right? You got to find the right level to take any trade from to start. So, hey, if there is no clear level of resistance that you would buy that put from, and it just drops off from a sudden price and then it goes without you, so be it. That happens to me on the way up with certain trades with buying calls or just buying the stock outright. Hell, that ARBB popped from 250 without me initially. I was like, shit, come on. Like, this thing's got to pull back, right? So I had to take it from the next leg up. But yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of that, at least. If there's a trade that goes without me, you can't beat yourself up for it. This is one of the worst weeks to be actively trading anyway. Even if we had what we had today, I'm still saying that because you're not expecting much. So the market's not permanently closing after today, tomorrow, or after the end of 2023. It's going to be open in 2024. Hopefully it's going to be open in 2025 too. No, it definitely will be. And with saying that, we're always going to be able to capitalize on a new trade as long as we are at least present at our desk and at least have a good level to take the trade from to begin. That is what matters most. Hey, you can look at Mara here and say, oh my God, this trade moved up so much. How could I have gotten in? Well, we've been calling this out as a swing trade for a long time now, since back in like late August, right? Like Brian and I, a bunch of us, Lewis, Grant, like all of us talking about these crypto stocks. It's not just the fact that this stock moved up, but we had such a strong level, that 1065, 1070. Go back into like July, we were talking about it then in Traders. So once this rebroke this strong level, that's what allowed the entry on the trade, at least. It allowed the opportunity to jump in. You know what I mean? So even if you think they're going to move up altogether regardless, well, you got to find the right price to do it from, right? So, it's just to say that. I wouldn't have been as jumpy to call that out as a swing if I wasn't as keen to see that level. Now, Roblox, really quick, because my guy Chuck was talking about this earlier, and I want to make sure I got this for him. So I was chatting with Chuck back on Friday, right? And we were talking about Roblox, pushing up nicely. It's one of his bread and butter stocks. So the way I looked at this chart, I was like, wow, like across the whole calendar year of 2023, it was like holding, certain highs pretty nicely here, you could say, breaking 52-week highs or close to it here. But once it broke this trend line, though, it was pretty choppy at first. And Chuck was calling it out on more Thursday and Friday from last week. So really just these two candles. It was above the line. And I said, wow, okay, it's already been chopping around it here a bit, a few days, trying to lay over it as support maybe. Well, the more it's above it and it's closing above it, then you're in good positioning to see a good swing trade over time. I wouldn't have been as jumpy to say that if I didn't see this trend that was built off these highs back in April and then July time here. You could also likely say that you have a psychological level to a degree at $45, $5 increment. But yeah, I mean, just once it's above that, the trend line, just makes for a clean possibility at least. So we'll keep an eye on this Roblox at least throughout this week going into, next week, so forth. But it's all based off a strong level. Now, the level that we focus on is initially based off level 3 and level 4. Then you could look back on your regular chart and see if there's any strong chart level to take a trade from. But, at least right now, as we're talking about Roblox, we don't really see too big of an iceberg showing up here. midday. You normally don't see icebergs popping up out of the blue like that. So, folks, if there's any other questions you got for me here, definitely let me know, as I've been doing this exact workshop every Tuesday morning for the last nearly 10 years. I realize this is one of the slower weeks of the year. I don't get too many questions on this week. So, I'm not trying to end Traders Talk early, but definitely if there's any other questions that you got for me, let me know. I got a nice trade, though, on SXTP. Stock trying to push up a little bit right now. Let's take a look at this live. NASDAQ Bookviewer here. I have it filtered slightly. It's on 500 shares minimum, but you got 133, about 10,000 plus on the bid. So technically that could be support. Looking at every other buy order above and below it. As far as resistance, looks like right around 150. You got 25 total orders making this up here between 148 and at 150. So I would simply just focus on that if you're using NASDAQ Bookviewer. 133 and then basically 150. I'll even just draw the line at that 148 though. But all right, let's take a look at Bookmap in just a second here. And again, that goes across the board for all of us at Cyber Trading U. If you're on any of our social media streams right now as we're conducting this workshop, welcome on aboard. Just make sure if you have any questions, feel free to type them in before we finish this up. Go another about 5 or so minutes here. But yeah, SXTP, hey, this ended up making a nice little pop-up just a moment ago here. Looks like it broke over VWAP price, which, for all intents and purposes could be good, but it held under VWAP really well from the morning. Here. Now it's trying to lay over it. So, for a mid-morning trade, late morning trade, literally coming off one day from Christmas where you typically don't have too many participants in the market, or as many at least, I wouldn't be as jumpy. Even if this pops up from here, it's totally okay to miss a small move if there is a better level ahead. Meaning like, hey, if this really wants to pop, then perhaps if this could break over that 148, 150, see if it can make that push. If it makes that break, then what's our next resistance after that? Because if it's not for a while, then I'd rather take it from a higher price. On Bookmap, at least, it's a more balanced order book. You don't really have like anything that stands out. 170, a little something there, but really up top at $2, 20,000 plus shares on the sell side. So yeah, as long as this could hold over 133, there's a chance for the 150, and then maybe later today we'll get our better push. That's all. All right, so folks, hey, I think that we're going to wrap up here in just a little bit. Typically not as many of us on a holiday week, let alone Christmas heading into the new year anyway. So there's one other stock I was looking at for a second, but it died off, the Tupperware trade. So Tupperware had a pretty large block print that got filled at $2.25 earlier. Looks like it at least held it as support here. So there's a case for another push higher, but this also has some good resistance at $2.50. Yeah, I mean, this is how you could tell. So notice there's no real large order at 250. Oh, even 258, actually, that number is. My apologies. I was going to go into the whole orders column again, but you could see at 258 even, there's about 27 total orders that make this up. So pretty interesting that it's 2,700 shares and it's 27 orders, and maybe that could be manipulation. Just that's a very clean balance there. But nevertheless, I would say 350 or 250 anyway would be a big level. And then from there, 258, 27 total orders here making this up. I understand there's also like 20,000 here at 243, but I'd keep an eye on like this 258. This is here for a reason. So I think over time you'll look to kind of see 258 act as a top on this trade, but we'll find out even later on this afternoon, just at 2:30 Eastern. We'll come back for the afternoon meeting. We'll reconvene, see if that 258 becomes a strong price to work off of. Folks, but hey, I think that we're going to finish up for right now. Just more of a shorter traders talk for this week. But again, expected given just not as many of us here, not as many questions that came in, and that's all right. But for Abdul, Patrick, Ray, Robert, you got Amy, Joyce, Brian, all of us here. Otherwise, I'm here throughout the day. I'm actually going to jump onto a few calls coming up at 12 o'clock and then 12:30. But I'm in the chat board all throughout the day at least. So if there's any questions that you got for me here, shoot me over a quick chat or email on top. And then, of course, for all of us on social media here, if you're interested in joining us inside our live trading room, continuing our commentary throughout the day, at least whether it be today, tomorrow, even next week, just make sure that you scan that QR code on the top left of the stream, get you inside our live trading room there. One of our education advisors would be able to reset your trial to begin, so you can have a full 5 days, not come in midway like today, or even with the holiday coming up on Monday with New Year's Day. You don't want to have that day, ripped off. So obviously our intent is to make sure that you get the full experience. So if you look to join us inside our room, just scan that QR code on the top left and then call our office. One of our education advisors will be able to discuss with you when you'd like to start and reactivate your trial to begin then. But any questions that you got for myself, though, feel free to shoot me a quick email, josh@ctutrading.com. Goes for Roberto or any one of us on YouTube that joined us here today, or any of our social media streams otherwise. But again, I'll be back on this afternoon just for the afternoon meeting, myself or Rich at 2:30 Eastern, and we'll go from there. Talk to everybody then. Take care.